Get ready, guys. I will have a new impersonation that I will be debuting. A new character for me to slip in when you're like, hey, I think this guy's only going to be a 38-minute episode. Can you just kind of do a bit for about 15 minutes, Jake? I don't know. Maybe stretch it out a little bit, walk it out, carry us through, Jake, as you always do because you're the star of the show. Could you just kind of like do an impersonation? And, sometimes I do, dueling impersonations. But, guys, I got a new character, and it is Dean Malenko. I have been around Dean Malenko enough now to get the voice down, just like the Iceman. Here's the funny part. He's actually hysterical. Because no lie, me and Dean Malenko, we were like a comedy team until I hit record on the fucking camera. I don't know how why this man refuses to be as funny as he is. And then as soon as he sees the red light, he stops. I don't understand what's in him. I wish the conversation I had before we started like our fireside chat, I wish I had that on tape because I could release that. It was the funniest thing in the fucking world. The man is full of one-liners and he doesn't take himself too seriously. And he had a very long day with us when we brought him into High Spots. And we had him sign so much stuff, which is a concern with his health. I don't think it's a secret. He has Parkinson's, so we were a little concerned.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we were a little concerned how an autograph signing with someone like that was going to be. And Dean was a trooper. He completed just about everything. But there was like a stack of 50 pictures. And it was late night. We kept him on camera an hour longer than we said we were going to because that's what Michael does.
Classic.
Basically, I was asked, like, hey, do you think you could sit down and knock out these last 50 pictures? This man took the chair that he would be sitting in to knock these 50 out, and it was a folding chair. He folded it up and slid it underneath the table, and he's like, I'm not sitting.
Fuck you.
I love just because you're like, hey, can you just sit down for like a few minutes? He goes, can't now. Like that's just that level of comedy and that level of like, he could just say like, no, I'm done, or it could be a dick about it. I say if you're gonna be like, hey, I'm not gonna fucking do that. You might as well come with a joke. That's always my rule of thumb. If you're going to be like, yeah, man, I'm not going to fucking do that, at least make the person smile when you tell them that. Like, it's just what I love Dean Malenko. Also, too, he told a whole bunch of Eddie Guerrero stories on my upcoming fireside chat. So that was my research. I mean, I could have talked to George South for this episode, but I chose to talk to Dean Malenko. I hope that's okay. I hope that's okay, guys. I hope that's okay. Just to make sure. I mean...
Well, we also have some Eddie Guerrero stories for you today because this is 10 Bell Pod. I'm Nick Alexander, joined live via satellite by Micah J. Loving.
Fun detail about us recording on this day. Tonight is my 20-year high school reunion, and I'm not fucking going. And this is kind of a sidebar. Jake, you going to go to your 20-year high school reunion?
I'd have to drive halfway across the country to go to my high school reunion to see my graduating class of 21 people.
Hey, that's a good point.
Do you have any idea how goddamn stupid that is?
Nick, you going yours? Huh?
Absolutely not. And that Dean Malenko-like voice over there is, of course, the Man Scout Jake Manning.
That's right. I'm the man of 1,000 tent stakes. You had a brilliant opportunity, Nicholas, and now I've got the best intros this week.
So if Eddie Part 1 was about a young Jedi learning the ropes, and Part 2 was the evil WCW Empire striking back, that only means today can be Return of the Jedi.
Which part is where all the internet gets pissed off and acts like man babies and complains about our episodes?
That will be Part 4 if we end up doing a Phantom Menace.
Oh, I can't wait for that part.
No, God, do you not pay attention? Phantom Menace is episode 1. This would be episode 6. And also, too, guys, we all know this is not Return of the Jedi. This is Return of the Mac. That's what this is. It's the Return of the Mac episode.
So when we last left our hero, Eddie had just formed a rebel alliance with Dean Malenko, Pegasus Kid, and Perry Saturn, narrowly escaping Darth Russo and the soon-to-be exploded WCW Death Star as they traveled through the pro wrestling galaxy to land on planet WWF.
Jesus Christ, you did all of it. Who are the Ewoks, though? Who are the fucking Ewoks?
Cruiserweights.
I ain't no Ewok. Shut your mouth. I'm in 1,000 holds.
So Eddie and friends showed up on January 31st, 2000's Raw is War during a match between Team Head Cheese and the New Age Outlaws.
Yeah.
Road Dogg ends up getting pushed over to where they're sitting. They start jawing at each other. They get in a fight. They get in the ring. What'd you guys think about this debut?
If you listen closely, I think you can hear them talk shit about how Brad Armstrong's the better Armstrong, and that's how the fight started. So that's kind of interesting.
Well, that is correct. Also, too, all of the clothes that those guys were wearing still holds up today. Like that, fashion from the year 2000, especially anybody from the WWE roster, whatever they were wearing on camera, holds up today. Holds up today. Leather pants 100%. With a leather, type hat that Saturn was always fucking wearing at that period of time.
He was fashionable.
I don't know how much, warmth that gives you, but I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to give it a shot and see how it all works out. Also, I need one of those weird orange kind of tiger stripe, but crushed velvet type shirts and button down, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I need. Or have a tucked in black t-shirt with a nice belt buckle, black boots. That's another go-to. I still go to today.
Eddie said he was a little concerned that the WWF crowd wasn't going to really know who they were, but, he hits his frog splash, Pegasus hits the headbutt, and the crowd is going apeshit here.
On the RF video shoot, he's asked what his main memory is, and Eddie's like, oh, that's easy. Slipping on the fucking top turnbuckle during my frog splash. Because Eddie is wearing cowboy boots to be in the fashionable way that Jake was talking about. And when you watch it, it did throw me off because Eddie slips. He still hits the frog splash. He's not off by anything, but Eddie comes down so fast when you watch, you're like, yeah, that's not a typical Eddie frog splash. He shows he can do it in cowboy boots, fuck up, and still, not truly botch it.
They walk back up the entrance ramp, and as they cut to commercial, JR mentions how totally radical they were. And that would be their stable name. Come back from commercial. There's Mick Foley, who takes the credit for bringing them in, and, kayfabe-wise. They poke some fun at WCW, and then they immediately start a little beef with Triple H.
Yeah, seeing Eddie beat down Triple H, that was nice.
The Radicalz had to prove themselves to Triple H and Stephanie if they wanted a contract, and on February 3rd SmackDown, they had a best of 3 against DX. Malenko took on X-Pac, Redacted faced Triple H, and Eddie's role would be teaming up with Saturn to take on Jesse James, Badass Billy Gunn. But during this match, Eddie would suffer yet another career setback when he hit Billy with a frog splash, landing awkwardly, popping his left elbow out of socket. And as soon as he lands, you're like, oh no.
Oh, God. Yeah. I remember watching this live. And then when he lands, and he just freaks out immediately. You see something is wrong, and it was just that, oh, God, no, why? Why? It is so heartbreaking to watch because Eddie's panic is palpable, man.
Also, too, you got to think about, you're coming from WCW. I mean, it's something that's talked about a lot in interviews and podcasts, and especially old timers shoot interviews. They were just trying to bury everybody who came from WCW. And whether that was true or not, that's a debate they have on Something to Wrestle, and we'll let them have that. But you can't deny the fact that that's a discussion that's happening in the locker room. Rightly or wrongly, because pro wrestlers are paranoid, and some of them are conspiracy theorists, and not good conspiracies that they believe in, like Flat Earth. So that is a conspiracy that is in probably all 4 of these men's minds when they make their debut and actually wrestle on the show, and thinking that any second of time they're gonna bury him. And I'm sure other guys in the WWE locker room themselves are fueling that fire as well. Like, hey, be careful out there, they're gonna try and fuck you over. I mean, that's something that's probably discussed, and winding these guys up, and somebody who is as volatile as Eddie. That's one of the things that my good friend Dean Malenko, I don't know if you know it, I don't know if I've said that or not. Me and Dean are friends. I don't know if I've heard it or not. But that was something that Dean brought up a lot, is that Eddie would just, rightly or wrongly, he had so much passion and emotion about things, and he could get wound up really easily, which, if it is in your benefit, you want somebody that passionate, but if it is coming at you, that is the last thing that you want to deal with. So he's somebody that wears his heart on his sleeve. I'm sure probably somebody came up to him earlier in the day like, hey man, be careful, they might try and fuck you over out there on live TV, you never know, just be careful. And the idea of you could be cut and fired at any moment in time, and then going out there and this minor accident happens, you're like, oh man, they're gonna fire. The idea of not only am I hurt, they're probably gonna fire me, or they're gonna cut my money. Like I said, just all the paranoia gets into pro wrestlers' minds because we have a weird conspiracy mind in ourselves, even though we're conspiring to convince the audience that we are in an actual legitimate fight. It's weird how we just fall into those conspiracies. There's layers to this, is what I'm trying to say. It's not just, ouch, my elbow hurts. He is thinking about his family and how he's going to provide for them. Because, you know, the legendary story is basically Eddie just walked in, heard the guys were quitting, and goes, I'm going to quit too. And
Sure. Why not?
Sure. And then had to explain that to his wife and family.
The first day I was a sous chef, I dropped an entire container of soup on the floor.
Cool.
That's what this reminded me of. I was just like, should I just leave now? Like forever? Or like, because I fucked up like immediately.
I'm done.
So this injury would put Eddie out of action for a month, but he didn't miss a single show. He'd come out wearing a sling, usually loaded with a lead pipe, and then he'd help the Radicalz turn heel the very next Raw when they jumped Mick Foley. Pegasus went off to the main event while Dean, Perry, and manager Eddie feuded with Too Cool and Rikishi. Eddie spent the weeks leading up to WrestleMania 16 healing up and then using his lead pipe to help the Radicalz get wins where he could.
I think that's the same strategy that Ted Bundy took, so good job, Eddie.
Eddie would be back in time for his first ever WrestleMania, and we talked about this match on Chyna's episode. Eddie really lets her get her shit in, brother.
Dude, it's even an understatement. Chyna power bombs his ass, testicular gorilla press, the sleeper bomb or whatever the fuck that thing was that Chyna did. He just lets her do everything and makes her look like $1 million because I guess Eddie, in the back of Eddie's mind, is like, I mean, this might make me look bad now, but shit, in the long run, I'm Eddie Guerrero.
Well, and what I think, I don't know if we talked about it too much in Chyna's episode, which, by the way, I apologize for the Chyna episode. Probably the worst one I've ever done. So you guys are fantastic. I sucked a dick. Something we didn't really explore with Chyna too much, but more I think about it, especially after like kind of processing with a clearer head some of the Chyna matches, and also think about my time growing up as a fan, because this is right in my heyday of being a fan. Chyna was such a big star. Like, she was such a great attraction. You paid attention anytime she was on the screen. You paid attention anytime she did anything. The idea of her wrestling, I have vivid memories of like, oh, this is incredible, this is great, Chyna's so good. But now, as a 17-year veteran of the professional wrestling business of the in-ring wars, she was not good. Just to let you guys know, she was not ready for that spot, but she had the juice behind her. But as far as like in-ring and the ropes, I think she got good, especially when she was wrestling in New Japan. You look at some of the clips there; those were pretty good, and it'd be interesting to see if Chyna would have continued on a path of wrestling or indie wrestling being a little bit better. It would be interesting to see how she evolved. Like if Shimmer was around at the right time and she was in the right headspace, it'd be interesting to see how that would evolve. But at the time that she was super popular, at this particular time, she was super fucking over and super fucking green and on national fucking television. Yeah. And something that happens with really great wrestlers, and it's only great wrestlers and guys that are just the best wrestlers that everybody respects, is they see someone like Chyna who's got all this juice behind him, and as opposed to being bitter and angry and mad about it, they forcibly put themselves in a position where they get to wrestle that person. You saw it with Chris Jericho with the Intercontinental feud that they had. You know, Chris Jericho wanted to be in that spot to prove to everybody that, hey, I can work with Chyna. And you know also right, as a wrestler that people will react every time that she does something. So that's great. You're already at an advantage, but you're at a disadvantage of her skill set. So you got to play to her strengths, and you got to figure out what those strengths are, address them, and then in your wrestler mind, in your conspiracy theory mind, you're thinking, this is going to prove to the office that, hey, if I can work with Chyna, imagine what I can do with The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin. I can make them look like stars. But in the office's mind, they're like, nah, fuck you. Trying to beat the shit out of you. We don't give a fuck about you. But in our dumb wrestler minds, we think we're doing the right thing, and we are. But the man who sits at the top of the ivory tower is like, oh, good. You made her look fantastic. Let's bring her up. Let's shoot her higher. Let's push you fucking down. Let's have you make Brian Christopher looked good. I don't know. So, sorry, Brian Christopher. You weren't a bad guy to me ever, but you were kind of fucking weird to me. And, moving on.
Moving on. Also, right around this time, and specifically this match, is when you really see Eddie getting a chance to separate himself and really show that charisma that was always there. And just the little winks and the little moments he has with Chyna in the ring and how WWE actually capture those well and creates those moments. You can really see Eddie separating himself and becoming the dude that he would blow up to be later.
The Raw after Mania 2000 on April 3rd, big night for Eddie. He'd do a few things. First, he cut a promo calling himself Latino Heat. He'd get his hands on his first WWE title belt when his new Mamacita turned on Jericho and helped Eddie get the win.
I love the part in the shoot interview because I just love hearing where different artists take different things and use them as inspiration. And that Eddie got Latino heat from the movie The Birdcage, which I think there's a moment where Nathan Lane talks about his Guatemalan heat, and Eddie just adapted that to Latino heat. And then one of the biggest wrestling gimmicks ever was born thanks to The Birdcage.
Can we just take a second and do what I'm doing in my mind right now? Picturing Eddie Guerrero being like, hey, this is a Robin Williams film.
Yeah, man.
How about I watch this movie, The Birdcage? Hey, Vicky, you want to watch this Birdcage? It's on HBO. And just Eddie holding a remote. And it'd be like, oh, let's watch this. I don't know. Or him getting the TV guide and oh, the Birdcage is on. Let's go.
Robin Williams.
Robin Williams, right? You can't go wrong. This new Nathan Lane guy, I love him in everything that he's in. Remember when we almost saw him in a Broadway production of The Producers, honey? He's a great guy. We were this close to seeing him. So, Vicky, come on. Robin Williams is on the television set. Get in here. Come on, Vicky. Get out there and put your arm around you. This is a great movie. Oh, that's a good line. Maybe I'll show you later. Am I right, Vicky?
And I just know it was the Saturday night HBO 8 o'clock movie because that was marquee and Eddie's marquee.
Now European champion, Eddie would begin his first big angle here, pairing up with Chyna, and he said he had a lot of fun at first, but as she started going through, her breakup with Triple H and some of her personal problems, she became a little more difficult to deal with, which I guess is pretty understandable.
Eddie also talks about how at the time, like Nick said, that he's just he didn't understand her and he didn't see where he was coming from. But later, when he had his own demons, it put it all in perspective for him, and it really kind of helped him retroactively bond with Chyna in a weird way. But it made him see the light once he went through his own fucked up stuff.
I mean, that's the thing too. She's going through a lot right now, trying to process fame. Also, too, I would believe that she's probably heard the whispers that people were like, oh, she's not that good. She doesn't deserve the spots she's in. And then also, too, going through what she's going through on a personal level, it's tough as a performer, as an artist. And I don't know, this is something that I go through and gets me in the weird headspaces that I get. Being not good enough for a large group of people, and then also not being good enough for some interpersonal relationships somehow hurts on the same level. Feeling like not rejected by your peers or hundreds of people or thousands of people, and then at the same time too not being accepted by just one person, it hurts equally the same. You would think that because just the mere numbers, hundreds of people don't like me or the people in my profession don't accept me, you think that would hurt more because it's more people, or vice versa, that's just one person, but all these other people like me. The pain is all the same. It's just magnified in the love for each of the two. So trying to mix that all into one, it was probably very difficult for her to deal with at the time. And then even Eddie going through what he's going through, in the sense that, I'm not being accepted professionally as well. And I don't know where his relationship is with Vicky at this time. I'm sure things aren't made very easy for him. And as we saw in Dark Side of the Ring, he had his issues and Vicky was almost washing her hands of it. So yeah, there is that unique bond, I'm sure, between those two that they didn't understand. Just the idea of acceptance as an artist and performer, and also the acceptance and love that we all seek at the end of the day, that, we get it in weirder ways, and people are like, oh, well, you got love this way, and don't you understand? And you're like, no, it's not. You don't really get. It's tough to explain, and I'm rambling, and I'm gonna stop, and I'm doing more work on Chyna's episode because I felt so bad because I fucked it up because I'm not a goddamn artist. I don't want acceptance. Go ahead.
Hey, it's just all about the theme of redemption, and that's what we're getting to here, and that's what Jake is showing with his rambling and wanting to correct his feelings of past failures.
I'm sorry I messed up the Chyna episode, okay, guys? I'm sorry.
I said your feelings. Not ours.
I think it came out pretty good. Someone just tweeted at us that they liked it a lot. Their profile picture was Chyna, so, pretty...
And us.
Yeah, and us. So the Chyna-Eddie duo's first feud would be with S.A. Rios and Lita after Lita accidentally hit Eddie off the top rope not once but twice while on the same team, and that led to Chyna tossing Lita to the woman-slamming Dudleys as payback. They'd wind up in a European title match at 2000's Backlash, which happened to be the same night that Mr. Eddie Guerrero got his kayfabe GED.
I mean, we mentioned this in the Chyna episode, but just all the sketches they did together, and they arrive fresh from the prom and drive up to the ring. I mean, it's so good, and Eddie's so proud of himself and just so enthusiastic. It's like you can't help but just see how good he was with everything he worked with. And one of the best Bruce Pritchard lines when he's talking about Eddie is like, no matter what you gave Eddie, he made it work. And I think this angle and this whole relationship with Chyna could have buried some people, but Eddie just turns it into absolute fucking gold.
Yep.
Well, it's commitment. It's a commitment to the bit, and there's just enough nugget of something he can grab onto as a performer. Whatever it is, he can. The idea of being a heartthrob is probably where he's like, oh, I can grab onto this. I can really sink my teeth in here. I don't know. Eddie doesn't seem like a guy who would outwardly go like, oh, I look good today, or say anything like that. I think deep down inside, like, he would probably say in his darkest, quietest moments, like, man, I'm a good looking dude. Like, he wouldn't let anybody ever say that. He'd probably never say that outwardly. But the way that he can swing back and forth and with facial expressions convey that, especially there's a different level. Like we talked about in previous episodes when he would come out as a heel in WCW, the scowl. But there was something that was like a different layer when he would come out as Latino Heat. There was a lovableness to it that almost had a sinister feel to it at the same time, too. It's very hard to describe, but if you compare the looks of Eddie when he would come out, there was clearly a different feel when he was Latino Heat, a sense of conceitedness, a sense of something that is inherently inside of him, but something that he hid, and you can clearly see it in there, and that's why it comes off so good, because it's genuine. It exists in all of us. It just, as a performer, he's able to tap into something that he keeps secret, keep hidden, something he may only show 0.05% of the time, but it's there. And for him to take something that is in such a minor quality of his regular life and then turning that up in front of a camera as a performer is really, truly his genius and his brilliance.
Eddie wins this match. At the end of it, they strip Chyna out of her prom dress because it's the Attitude Era. And Eddie's comedy and charisma paired with Chyna's celebrity was starting to get them cheered, so they had to turn him face. New face Eddie would head into 2000's Judgment Day to successfully defend his title against former Radical friends Saturn and Dean Malenko. Next up would be the King of the Ring, and this is the first little rough patch for Eddie and Chyna. Eddie had beat Matt Hardy, which led to him facing Chyna in the next round on June 19th's Raw. Eddie tricked her into a roll-up pin, and this was devastating for Chyna because she wanted to become the first ever Queen of the Ring. But Eddie got back in her good graces by giving her a puppy.
I realized in my notes that I wrote some iteration of, man, this might be Eddie's best acting performance. I wrote that on this Raw match with Chyna, and I think I wrote it on 5 other things. But seriously, like, the way that Eddie is so conflicted in this match, and he won't punch her, and he holds back, but then he, like, reluctantly, frustratingly gets her in a headlock, like, all right, I got to do this, but I don't want to. And yeah, please go back and watch how sweet and nice Eddie is as they embrace, and then wraps Chyna up for the small package for the win in this match. It is so damn good. Eddie he plays all the levels beautifully, and it's kind of the first real exposure to show how good Eddie's acting was in just fucking so many layers, man.
Hold on. Why did we fucking talk about wrestling when Nick was basically talking about how if a girl is upset, you get them a puppy? Nick Alexander, if you know his Instagram, he has a new puppy. Nick, what the fuck did you do to Spencer? Like, why do you have to fucking get a puppy?
I fucking schoolboy rolled her up and
jeez.
Just right. She's writing for a successful show on ABC. She's just trying to get her work done, and you schoolboyed her out of nowhere. And Mike Chioda's in there making the count. He's looking for work, and you're like, hey, Mike Chioda, I know cameo's kind of a thing, but you just kind of like count 3 to this match and like, okay, cool, I've done this many times before, and now you gotta buy a puppy.
I've learned that a dog is a perfect animal to hit with a surprise RKO out of nowhere. They're like, They fall forward. He thinks we're playing.
They always no-sell it, though.
Yeah, I know. Fucking, he's about to learn some respect, goddammit.
Well, and then you gotta look at that sorry, I fucked it all up.
No, now I want to hear it. Now I want to hear it.
I was going to be like, and you hit the RKO, and then I was going to sing the wrong theme song. I forgot.
Damn it. That would have been even funnier.
I was going to sing Edge's theme song after you hit the RKO. I don't know why. I don't know why that was in my head. I was just like, no, you hit the, maybe because like, I don't know, Edge and Randy Orton are still fucking wrestling for the fucking 5,000th fucking time. Because we didn't see enough of that in the 47-minute match they had at WrestleMania. I don't fucking know.
Nick, please put that in post-production. Please put Edge's music over top of all of
I
this.
will.
So all my girls in the club say ho, 'cause you know just how we do. Yeah.
So Eddie would hit his own bit of bad luck in the next couple pay-per-views. First, he'd get bounced out of the King of the Ring by Val Venus, and then he'd drop his European title to Saturn at Fully Loaded. If you remember from Chyna's episode at SummerSlam 2000, her and Eddie faced Val Venus and Trish Stratus in a match where if Trish or Val get pinned, the winner gets the belt. Chyna ends up getting the pin. And that led to September 4th Raw, where Eddie would get his first Intercontinental title win as he laid on top of Chyna, trying to revive her, and the ref took it as a 3 count.
The moment when the ref hits 3 and the way Eddie's head pops up like, oh, what's that? What happened here? I'm going to say this way too many times, but Eddie's comedic skills are fucking great, and this match is a good example, because then he's like, oh no, oh, I don't want this belt. Oh no, China's up. Oh, I'll hide the belt behind me. It's just masterclass.
And see, here's the thing. People will be like, well, you had Eddie Guerrero. Why couldn't you just have like a regular good finish? I'm like, no, these finishes is how stories evolve. And coming up for a good finish that gets people talking is so fucking difficult. And a finish that is unique, that evolves a story. Like, oh, this guy is chasing the good guy, or this guy's chasing the bad guy, or like the whole breakup of a fucking tag team, or a breakup of a couple, or like coming up with a unique finish like that is just, it's so difficult. It's so tough, and it's so fucking rare. Doing like the revive thing, and then it works enough, like, and you need people like who pull it off just expertly. And I had a finish this is very similar. Like, I formed a tag team with White Mike, and I was trying to get him to be more serious, and we wrestled the Ugly Ducklings, and we just hit a combination that was basically going to be like our finishing maneuver. I cover Lance Lude, and I'm on top of him, and I'm on him for the pin. I got all my weight on his shoulders, and my hands are laid flat on the mat. We just hit this big combination. White Mike is just so ecstatic. He's jumping up and down as the 3 counts happening, and as he jumps, right as they go 1, 2, he lands on my hand, which forces me up off of the pin. And I look at him like he's the biggest fucking moron of all time. It's such a dumb little thing, but stories like that, and to me, like, I'll never have a finish as good as that. That's the best fucking finish that I could ever come up with. And those are what advance a story in professional wrestling. Everybody's trying to think, well, he's a bad guy. Just pull the tights. Put your finger. Just do it. Like, nobody puts the extra thought process of what is a finish that is going to progress the story. The story that we have here is we're doing this slow breakup with Eddie and Chyna. How do we get the belt off him as opposed to her just laying down or convincing? Like, they could have just done, like, he convinces her enough to just lay down for him or whatever, or she gets hurt early in the night. Like, hey, I can't defend it anymore. Well, tell you what, baby, I'll win the title from you. Really, they could have did the simple way out, but trying to come up with a plausible reason, like, no, I was looking out for you. I was taking care of you. And when really, like, was he or was he taking advantage of the situation? So we don't really know. The idea of it, and he's surprised at first, but it's the idea of the Intercontinental title almost corrupting him. He probably was genuinely trying to watch over her and revive her. And in doing so, he won the belt, which he didn't expect. But when he did, he goes, oh, I like this.
Yeah.
I like being the champion. I'm something important. And the greed corrupted him and used that as the structure for the story.
There's that great little moment later in the same Raw where Eddie is passionately trying to convince Chyna. It's like, nah, baby, I love you. I didn't do this to just take your title away, blah, blah, blah. And they finally have that embrace. And there's that camera shot of Eddie behind her back as they're hugging, that devious little trickster smile that he pops out, and it puts those extra layers to the whole thing, that the story they were telling. And I assume that's exactly how Nick smiled when him and Spencer embraced after everything, and Nick just let a devilish smile come out of him to a camera that didn't exist.
Nick is always playing to a camera that doesn't exist. I don't know why. Just typical Nick Alexander shit right there.
I watch too much of The Office.
Yeah, there's your problem.
Yeah.
But to put a little bow on all of this, it leaves questions.
Yes.
And that's the important thing where you want to be left every single week at the end of a television program is questions. Something that, like, I get a lot on the Eric Bischoff podcast is thinking about how can I leave people with questions, because that's what will cause you to tune into something, is the answer to a question. So when people see my previews for the virtual gimmick table, like, how much is this? What's this? And I go, make sure you tune in, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I've got it saved on my clipboard of copy and paste things to put when people ask me questions. What do you think I'm going to tell you that? And then know what you're going to do? You're going to message me like, hey, can you just send me an invoice? And then you're not going to fucking watch. I want you to watch the fucking show so you can see how fucking brilliant I am on the show. Just had Ricky the Dragon Steamboat tell me I'm great at hosting these virtual gimmick tables, these things that didn't exist fucking 6 months ago.
And I won't go on too much of a rant, but Jake is spot on. It's just, I could rant forever about how the lost art of movie teasers and how trailers now and just the internet in general gives away all the fucking movie. So then, like, it's like, I don't really care that much about going to see it. You need the mystery, you need questions, you need intrigue. Be like, I can't wait to see what this movie is about, or I can't wait to see what's going to happen next in this storyline.
Yeah, unless it's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you can wait to see that. There's no big deal. There's no rush. Fuck that movie. This is why an artist needs limitations, because if you give somebody free reign to do whatever they want, it's fucking not good.
I'm not going to go on a rant about how that movie's brilliant, but we'll talk about that on a different podcast. Nick?
The next little bump in the road for our couple here would be when Chyna for real posed in Playboy.
And I can assume that Eddie's acting performance, where he totally flips out and is screaming and trying to get into the Playboy office, I assume he just copied after Triple H's behavior.
Triple H's behavior?
Yeah, when he was supposedly, Chyna talked about how he was so jealous of her getting in Playboy and everything, and yada, yada, yada.
Well, you know what? I know what I didn't think about that you forced me to think about now.
Yeah.
Is that the original members of DX, like, half of them had posed nude for either Playgirl or Playboy.
Wow, yeah.
Think about that.
Thank God it wasn't Road Dogg. That's...
See, when I think the original DX, I think of Rick Rude,
Okay,
Chyna, Triple H, because that was what it was before Road Dogg and all them. I'm not saying fucking Billy Gunn showed his wanger to the world.
Yeah, he would.
I mean, have you seen the size of that man's hands? I can only fucking imagine. But no, like, Eddie was fucking incredible in that, and I guess even, like, he was so believable that security at the Playboy Mansion thought this was a deranged man trying to get in at one point in time, or went through the wrong door or whatever. Just the scenes of just filming at the Playboy Mansion, of course, obviously, like, it's WWE Attitude Era. Of course, like, we have to film at the Playboy Mansion. That's like all the goals and dreams of the Attitude Era was supposed to produce. You know, like, because we need to up the ante. We need to be so popular as a company, we go to the Playboy Mansion. Basically, the Attitude Era was basically like the 14-year-old boy that's like, you know what? As long as I make it to the Playboy Mansion, this is the greatest thing ever. After that, there are no accomplishments in fucking life.
If only they could have set up a table on like an inflatable raft in the grotto of the Playboy Mansion and powerbombed somebody into the pool through the table. I think that's the only way they could have got closer to what they wanted.
Just when it appeared that Eddie and Chyna were going to break up, he proposed to her and she accepted. But we'd never get that Macho Man Elizabeth wedding. We wouldn't even get the roofie rom-com Triple H and Stephanie wedding, because soon after, Eddie was caught in the shower with 2 of the Godfather's employees.
Oh, congratulations on PC talking about the ladies that came down to the ring with the Godfather. I appreciate that on the way that you would say employees. Somehow it rides a line of disrespectful and respectful at the same time, but it is accurate. You are not wrong.
His girls were also independent contractors who cannot gain income from a third-party source. So, full circle, full circle.
They're filling out 1099s just the same as the wrestlers.
After breaking his Mamacita's corazon, Eddie was once again a heel. He'd team back up with the Radicalz, and they'd feud with Chyna and DX. Mostly Chyna, Billy Gunn, Road Dogg, and K-Quick, a.k.a. R-Truth. I did not fucking remember Ron Killings in year 2000 WWE.
What?
At all.
Are you fuck off, man? And the second you saw that man, and he debuted on like Sunday Night Heat, and he goes, okay, quick. I just remember him saying his name so fast. It's like when somebody tells you the name, and it's like a wrestling name or a gimmick name, you're like, oh yeah, that's you. Of course you'd say, because you said your name so quick. K-Quick, get it.
Yeah.
And then, like, he was trying to get the Road Dogg and telling he was Road Dogg's friend. Like, he's basically doing what he did with the 24/7 belt. He was doing it back in Sunday Night Heat. Okay, quick, I'm going to bother you. I'm going to do a little segment. We're going to do this. And then let him go out there and rap. And then he rapped the song, and then all of a sudden Road Dogg's like, guess what? You're going to be with me, and we're going to rap together because I saw you, and I realized I should be rapping too because my name is Road Dogg Jesse James. I'm from Pensacola, Florida. Of course it'd be fantastic at rap. Let's do this. And then so, like, they formed this weird tag team, and we are not for the better that Road Dogg left, and we didn't get more K-Quick and Road Dogg. I guarantee we probably would have dabbled in something that wouldn't have stood the test of time because of insensitiveness. So, because, I mean, you know, it would have been interesting for sure. But that you don't remember it is shocking to me, because the second that I saw Ron Killings, the man was a fucking star. He's always been a star, always will be a star, and he will always be 24 years old.
The Radicalz faced DX in Eddie's first traditional Survivor Series match. Even though Eddie was eliminated early, his team got to win. And on Thanksgiving, Eddie's Intercontinental Championship run would come to an end when he lost to Bill Gunn.
Bill Gunn?
It's weird when you say it that way, right?
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Please amend.
William Guthrie. How about that? That makes it even weirder. That is his real name. They just shortened it down. It's not Kip Sotka. No, it is actually William Guthrie, and they just chopped it off.
In early 2001, Eddie was right back in the IC title scene, looking to take on now champion Chris Jericho. At 01's No Way Out, basically the entire 93 J Cup would have a match. You have Jericho defending his belt against Eddie, Pegasus, and X-Pac, and it's a fun, chaotic match with a Justin Incredible cameo.
And I'm going to be a little bit of a dick. There was no J Cup in 93. It was 94.
Oh, whatever.
So
Fuck off.
Best of the Super Junior.
Yeah. Goddamn Redditor.
No, I'll co-sign on that. You should fucking know that. If I said that in front of Dean Malenko, we would not be the friends we are today. Just to clarify. And he would fucking correct me. I promise you that much. So I'm glad somebody stepped in for the sake of professional wrestling. I spent 20 fucking minutes. Actually, I spent probably, if you add it all up, 35 minutes talking about the build up to the Super J Cup in 94 and then the ramifications in professional wrestling. That's basically what the entire fireside chat with Dean Malenko was about. Like, let's just start at the Super J Cup because I have fucking questions.
I've been in Eddie Guerrero research for like 6 months now. I don't even remember part 1. I don't remember.
And 93 was such a big year, so I just keep coming back to 93 Eddie Guerrero for whatever reason. Not 95 or 97 or these other, just 93. That's the number that sticks in my head.
The glory days.
Eddie said they only had 5 minutes to prep for this match, so they just call it out there. Jericho kind of Houdini's a sneaky roll up on my boy and retains his title. Failing to win the Intercontinental title, Eddie would refocus on the European belt, eventually meeting Test at what many consider the greatest WrestleMania ever, number 17. Eddie gets the win and picks up the European title again.
And in classic Eddie fashion, I can't remember which one it is, but there's a pay-per-view where Eddie with the European title in England obviously gets on the mic and talks shit about the entire continent and the title that he is holding. He doesn't want to have the title. And it's good, easy heel shit. Just Eddie shit-talking his own title in the place that it represents.
And seeing, like, Eddie Guerrero take on Test, holy fucking shit. This is like second or third match in.
Yeah.
This match is incredible. If Eddie's crushing it with Test, what the fuck do we have to look forward to for the rest of the show? And it is... This match is incredible, and all the other matches are equally incredible, if not fucking better than. That's what's so great about WrestleMania 17. It should be definitely on the list of shows to show to people. Like, this is how great wrestling can be.
Yeah.
Right.
And if somebody has no idea why wrestling's great, you show them WrestleMania 17. Funny thing about WrestleMania 17, this is when it was like a first year of college. And the cable company that carried the Monday Night Raw USA Network in our dorms, that cable company was having a fight with the USA Network. So they took wrestling off the USA Network. Actually, no, they didn't take it off the USA Network. They whatever cable company carried it was off that cable package. So
Right.
I didn't get to see Monday Night Raw. So I'm like, fuck, how am I gonna pay attention to wrestling? This is before the internet was like the go-to. So I guess I could have went to WWE.com, but I'm like, fuck it. If I can't watch Monday Night Raw, I don't want to fucking watch wrestling. Monday Night Raw every week, and it was leading up to WrestleMania. And this is how much I love my fucking parents. First of all, my mom would buy the fucking pay-per-views and record it, and we only had a VCR on the main TV in our house. My mom would hit record and leave it just running and leave the fucking room and then watch TV in her bedroom the rest of the evening. Pay-per-view would stop. She would hit stop record. She would then mail that tape off to me so I could watch the pay-per-views. That is why my mother is going to heaven, guys.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
So she was continuing to do that even though I wasn't watching Monday Night Raw, and she sent me the tape for WrestleMania, and I'm like, I can't watch this until I see the Raws. And then all of a sudden WCW closed, and like there's Monday Night Raw. I'm like, well, fuck, now I'm going to definitely be behind because of the same fucking thing now. And so then somebody had to give me a verbal rundown of WrestleMania 17 just so I could be caught up with Monday Night Raw. And then I had to retroactively watch WrestleMania 17. So it's like, ugh, like, so I'm like seeing it after the fact. It's old news now. And I'm like, God, I wish I would have saw this fucking live in the moment, experience it. But fuck, man, it still holds up to this fucking day. I saw it like just a few years ago, and I'm like, man, this is as good as it gets. This is as best as it gets. And I should have just been like, fuck it, I'm just gonna watch WrestleMania as soon as my mom sent me the fucking VHS tape and did what she fucking did because she's a goddamn fucking saint. All you kids that want like, oh, I don't pay attention to the Raw, I just watch it on Twitter, or I can just stream it on my phone. Fuck off. You'll never know how much your parents fucking love you like I do, okay? Because that's what my mom did for me, is just take up the whole fucking living room to record a pay-per-view on a VHS tape and then fucking mail it to me because I fucking love her.
So far, Eddie had a pretty great run with Chyna. He's won some belts, and overall, he's had a better time than in WCW. But as we mentioned in part 2, Eddie's car wreck while in WCW had long-term effects, and they weren't just physical. Eddie was slipping deeper and deeper into his drug use and alcoholism, and soon his entire life would begin to spiral. Personally, Vicky wanted a divorce. Professionally, Eddie got so bad that Dean, Perry, and Pegasus went to the office and told them they were concerned, fearing that if something didn't change, they were going to lose their friend. That led to Eddie showing up to work, where he was told that JR, Bruce Pritchard, and I assume Conrad wanted to meet with him. They said they weren't there to judge him, get a fucking grip, but Eddie didn't listen.
There's moments in I think it's on the first Eddie DVD set that WWE put out, and it's one of those like 50-minute documentaries. And when we hit this moment in the story and you get to Dean and Pegasus talking about like they didn't want to wake up to news that one of their best friends has died. It's just, you can feel in that moment how much those two dudes who they all rode with throughout the years and years and years, how much they cared about Eddie. It hits so damn hard, and you can see the heart through and through.
Well, and I've heard the stories of like after the shows they would ride together, especially like as Dean's kind of like phasing out his career and Perry's kind of going off and doing his own thing. It was like Chris and Eddie, and like Eddie would get like super drunk like after the show, and Chris is basically like driving as like Eddie's like passed out fucking drunk. You would drink like a whole bottle of wine, or you would drink whatever and just get fucked up after the show because he's so bummed out and so messed up. And Chris is like, we got to get to the next town, but this guy's more concerned with just getting messed up. And it was like, it put a big toll on him. And then it makes me think back to the days like how I was after a show. I'm like, I gotta get drunk like immediately after, and the times that like I just flipped the keys to Charlie Dreamer or Caleb Connolly. Like, I'm gonna get messed up after the show as fast as possible before we even leave the venue sometimes. Or if there is some place where I can go get drunk that's close by, I'm gonna finish my match. I'm gonna go get drunk because I'm done off work. You're driving, or like, as soon as we're done, let's get to a bar so I can get drunk and then toss the keys to you so we can get to the hotel. And just thinking about all the times that I did that. Luckily I had friends that were good and took care of me, but I can only imagine what it was like. Because as I've always learned, it was always the pursuit of the high is what really where the damage is. I'm trying to be as sober as possible, and I keep a bottle of whiskey in my house. People are like, well, you're sober, why do you keep a bottle of whiskey in your house? Because I know that me going to go find a bottle of whiskey will be the thing that destroys me. If I know it's there and I reckon with it, I'm like, okay, it's there if you need it, but don't go it and get it and need it. That's the thing that keeps me from leaving my house and doing something destructive. Or feel like, oh, well, I don't have any alcohol in the house. Let's go to a bar and do this. And then the time in between from the bar to the house is where the issue comes up. Or anytime I leave the house, at least I know I can be here if I need to be, if it gets that bad. But it will always be the pursuit of that and how that messes things up. And also, too, being close to somebody who can't pull the nose up out of that as well. And the frustrating part, like thinking about the dark side of the ring, where Vicky talked about Eddie just being messed up on the couch and just be like, well, if he dies, I hope he does, because I can't take this anymore. It's a very real feeling when you have somebody who you're close to who's inebriated most of the time. They're not present in that relationship, and like especially if there's kids involved and you have or other responsibilities, even if it's a dog, and you're like, you're messed up all the time and you're not taking care of the dog, you're not taking care of this, you're not taking care of the house, you're just coming home and getting messed up every single night. But yeah, it's a messed up situation.
A week after Eddie's first meeting with JR and Pritchard, things really jumped up a notch. He and Vicky had a huge fight, and that led to Eddie throwing back a bunch of pills and getting super drunk. Problem is, he had to fly out for TV. So a fed-up Vicky helped an inebriated Eddie board a plane. He somehow managed to get to the venue and was still just obliterated. The Dudleys and the Radicalz tried to cover for him, but word got back to the office, and this was the last straw. It was May of 2001, and WWE gave Eddie an ultimatum: go to rehab or lose his job. To WWE's credit, they put him in the best rehab center in the country. They paid for everything. Eddie went through a brutal detox and then the 12-step program, and after 4 months of treatment, Eddie made a ton of progress, but unfortunately for him, he was still very far away from rock bottom. Upon leaving rehab, he was informed that his reckless spending habits were catching up with him as he owed the IRS 6 figures. Eddie filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. He lost his house, his cars, his boat. Out of rehab, he was separated from Vicky and the kids. Eddie got an apartment in Tampa and for the first time in his life, he was truly alone. Not able to cope, Eddie lost his sobriety as well, first grabbing some drinks with his friend Turi, then his brother Hector. And while trying to make a comeback in Heartland Wrestling, Eddie slipped up once again. He went bar hopping. The next morning, he was so drunk that when he tried to drive home, he couldn't remember the code for his security gate, so he just tried to ram his truck into it. They called the cops. Eddie got a DUI. The story hit the papers. That got back to WWE, and Eddie Guerrero was fired.
I think this is the instance where he told himself, like, I'm just going to have one glass of wine. I'm just going to have one drink. But then Eddie learned that I can't have one drink because one drink always turns into more and more. And it's a slippery slope that he had to learn really fucking painfully.
And it creeps up on you, man. Like it really does. I mean, the first real big slip for me as far as alcohol goes is obviously, I've said multiple times, I'll rough it. Like a lot of stuff has gone for me, up good and bad, last several months. I think the thing that just kind of happened is that, you know, like I'd been sober for a while, but then all of a sudden I hadn't had a drink in a very long time. And like I was trying to support local businesses and my bar up the street where I get all my bar food because they serve chicken wings until 2 a.m. So I always go to Steamers. And so I want to keep them in business because I want to make sure that I can get food at 1:30 at night because there's so few places, especially now, that have food available at 1:30 at night. And I'm a vampire, so I need food that late at night. So I was just trying to support local businesses and get takeout food because I don't want to stick around too long. But like, it's just when things started to open up for bars. And while I waited for my chicken wings, I'm like, well, why don't I get a beer? Why don't I just get one beer? And I'm like, it feels good. And that's all I'd have. I'd just have the one beer while I wait for my chicken wings. But then, like, I would be getting my chicken wings every week, and I would get a beer every week. And then all of a sudden, like, I hit another bump in the road personally. And then all of a sudden, like, it went from one beer to 2 beers. So all of a sudden, going home and open up that bottle of whiskey that I was telling you about before and start drinking out of there. And see, the key is always for when I drink, and I can have, I say that I can have a beer every once in a while, but like I said, I know how fast it slips, is that I would have one drink, and if that drink feels good and I order a second drink, I better feel all of the fucking guilt in the world, so much in fact that I have to fucking choke that second one down or walk away from it and be like, I can't have it because this is destructive. I've done an awful thing. I killed muscle growth. The workout I got today was ruined. I need to feel all the fucking guilt in the world when I get that second drink. And if I feel like, I deserve like a little, like, 3 fingers of whiskey, if I have that first sip of whiskey and I don't feel all the guilt in the world, that's how that evolves so fast. That's how it escalates so quickly. And it's just something as simple as I'll take one beer while I wait for my chicken wings, and then that devolves into, oh fuck, I need to get super fucking drunk when I get on this flight. I need to be absolutely completely fucking shit faced. As soon as I land, I need to hurry up and get to the hotel bar, get a beer to go while I get in this fucking hotel room. I gotta hurry up and get back, and I'm gonna open up the fucking whiskey. Yeah, okay, if I start drinking early enough, I can get 2 or 3 drinks so I can get really fucked up and just pass the fuck out, and that's how it starts. It's not so much like you have one drink and then you're fucked.
Yeah.
It's the second one. It's the second time. It's the thing that opens it up. That's the one that gets you, is not feeling that past the second one. That's what opens the floodgates. I mean, you could have the one and it's a bad experience, and sometimes that's the thing that kind of wards you away from it. Because every once in a while, sometimes I would do this thing where I feel like I need to relieve the pressure of that alcoholism, and sometimes I would have a few and realize it's a bad idea, and that would be the thing that continue on my sobriety for 6 or 8 months sometimes. But like, if I didn't have that little like thing there, I could have broke a couple of times, broke easily. So that's the thing that I think, like, my experience and my battles with alcohol. So it is just that one drink, but it's also getting that second one is where the real difference happens.
There's a Denzel Washington movie called Flight where he plays an alcoholic airline pilot. And there's a moment in that movie that I will never, ever fucking forget. Denzel's a recovering alcoholic. He's been clean and sober. I can't remember the time frame exactly, but there's this moment where he is at the bar and he's finally had enough and life has just had its toll. And he orders 2 shots of vodka. And the way that Denzel sells it and the way he experiences just the emotional journey of finally doing those 2 drinks is just fucking heart-wrenching. And throughout Jake's entire story, that's all I could see and all I could feel. And it's just, oh man, it just fucking hurts to think about.
Eddie was fired November 12th, 2001. Alcoholism had cost him his wife, his kids, his home, his reputation, and now his entire career. Finally, at rock bottom, Eddie was ready to change. He went to AA and got a sponsor. He dedicated himself to God, got back in the gym, and after the longest stint away from the business since he was a baby, he started getting back on shows. Eddie said he didn't want to be another one of those guys on the indie circuit who blew it and just kind of lazily bounced show to show, just hoping and praying that WWE would call him back. He wanted to go out every night, whether there were 25 people, whether there were 300 people, and prove that he was one of the best wrestlers on this planet, and that is exactly what he did.
I heard this story from Les Thatcher, and you brought up Heartland Wrestling, and around this time too, especially when he was sober, he recognized that he had to work very hard at his sobriety. Les Thatcher would tell the story that, he's like, Eddie came to me and knew I had a ring available and asked if he could work out in the ring, and was there anybody he could hang out with that was sober and wasn't a big drinker or a partier, somebody he could kind of hang out with. And Les was like, yeah, we have Jamie Noble here. He's a good hand, and you can call him up whenever you want. Here's a key to my gym. This is when we do training. We do have a second ring here, so you can use it then, but just to let you know that if you want free reign, it's here. You can do it this time. You can have the whole gym to yourself if you want some privacy, but you can have it whenever you want. We have a second ring, and, it's free for you to use whenever you want, Eddie. And he would basically just call up, Jamie Noble, and like, hey, let's go do it. And Les Thatcher always tell the story that he ran a class. Well, Eddie was in the opposite ring with Jamie Noble, and they would basically just chain wrestle around, work on the basics. I mean, get your ring up, not do anything too crazy, maybe try a thing or two, but really get in there and just work really hard at it. And Les would always talk about how they would be in there for over an hour. Jamie Noble, him and Eddie and Jamie Noble just wrestling around, that the mat would be just soaked with sweat when they left. Because ring shape is very important to keep, because once you lose it, it's very tough to get back. And during this pandemic, all of this happened. I didn't know, what was going to happen. I knew I had to keep in ring shape. I was kind of scared of what I was going to do, how I was going to do it. And it was that story that inspired me to get up with Lucky Ali, and I go, hey, I need you to go to the ring work out with me, and just kind of, you'll learn a little bit of stuff. We'll work on the timing, and we would just get in there, and we would wrestle until we soaked the mat. There's a couple of times we had to stop training because we had soaked the canvas so much that it was dangerous to run rope spots because we were slipping on the canvas so much. And we would wrestle for a minimum of an hour every single time. I'd put the alarm on as soon as I got in for an hour, and then we would wrestle for an hour. Sometimes it was more chain wrestling. Sometimes we would do more bumping, but it would never be like the way that these fucking kids train in the ring now, where they let me try this. Oh, let me try this. And then they sit around, they talk. And it's like, no, we get in, we lock up, we chain wrestle. We finally, when we're loosening up, let's start doing some rope spots, do some bump spots. All right, let's get more unique. Let's tell a little story. Let's put some psychology to it. And then let's get through a big, long ending spot. Let's go through it. Boom. And we're done. And we just work real hard for an hour. We get in, we get out. And it was this time in Eddie's life that I tried to emulate during this time of my life, especially as things got more difficult for me mentally. And as I started to struggle with my own sobriety, it was remembering this moment in Eddie's life and how hard he worked is the thing that got me through what I'm going through right now. And now, unfortunately, Lucky Ali had to move back to Washington. So now it's trying to find a new JB Noble is where I sit in my point in life. And because I haven't had the opportunity to do that, I feel like I'm much more angry, irritable, because once you are a wrestler and you don't wrestle, it is the thing that defines you, you feel a bit incomplete. And that's where I currently sit right now, is trying to find that person to wrestle with. So these get-togethers with Jamie Noble were definitely the thing that were the binding force in his sobriety and his life. And also probably getting back to the way he probably started. It wasn't Eddie going in there hey, let me do tornado DDTs and frog splashes left and right. He goes, yeah, I know how to do a frog splash, but let me just kind of hone in a little bit more on the rest of the stuff.
I think what's so interesting about Eddie's shoot interview It's an RF video one, is Eddie recorded it and chose to do it right around this time. You get to see him in his most vulnerable and his most fucked up and recovering, but also gracious and humble. It's so fascinating to see him at his weakest and his just almost his rock bottom when he's just slightly coming up from it, and to see him voice everything. It adds a much more interesting aspect to his shoot that you definitely should watch.
The first promotion to call up Eddie was Impact Championship Wrestling in New York, ran by Jack Sabbath. They wanted him to come up and do a draw with their champion Loki, but Eddie was like, no, let me put him over. And everyone was like, what? Because most guys coming down, they're like, nah, brother, I'm not going to lose to anybody.
And it's also the aspect of like, wait, Loki's a dick.
I don't think he was a dick yet.
Well, I mean, it was more of a reason for this. I mean, this is giving Loki fire. Like, listen, I must go over. I must honor the legacy of Eddie Guerrero, who put me over in Impact Wrestling. But that's the thing about it. Like, it's gracious about Eddie. Also, like, that's the self-awareness of Eddie that I think a lot of people don't have when they come off of WWE. Some guys, they try to overly do it like, oh, no, I'll put the guy over. It's no big deal. And they don't realize what they're doing. And they're just trying to, like, fakely do it. Where, like, Eddie recognizes, like, no, I'm going to be Eddie Guerrero afterwards. Like, I'm going to be Eddie regardless, no matter what. So why help make somebody? And not just be like, oh, I'm going to let him win and I'm not going to put him over. I'm going to do my thing and I'm going to put him over. Like, no, like, let me actually fucking show everybody how great this guy is. Bring him up to my level and then make him a bigger deal. That's what Eddie was going out to do. And just letting somebody win and putting somebody over are two distinctly different things, and that is the difference between what Eddie is doing. He's not just letting a guy win, he's putting somebody over and asking him, what do you want to do? What are the things that you like to do? What are your moves so I can take them better than anybody else? And understanding, like, hey, there's this budding thing of independent wrestling. I need to help nurture this. And I don't know if this is the particular indie run or not, or this was something that happened before WCW. I don't know where to place this, but I knew this section was going to be mostly about indies. And this is going to be, if we're going to talk about Eddie Guerrero being on the indies, this is going to be the spot. So I kind of saved this story for this particular spot. I can't really place it for sure. But this is a story that I heard from George South about Eddie Guerrero. And this is something that, you know, speaks volumes of who Eddie Guerrero is. And I definitely think it was after WCW some places. So it might have been in between. I'm not 100% sure. But George South and Italian Stallion somehow, I think, booked the old Coliseum here in Charlotte, Independence Arena, for a big like church youth gathering thing. They were booked to do a wrestling show. They had some sponsorship money. They had radio stations. And if it wasn't the old Coliseum, it was someplace big that was a traditional wrestling venue here in Charlotte. And they had a very large budget to bring in whoever. They had Superfly Jimmy Snuka, previous episode or two, and then other big stars. I think Ronnie Garvin. The list goes on and on. It was just a jam-packed show. And they booked Hector Guerrero and Eddie Guerrero. And I think I'm almost positive this is definitely post WCW, because George was talking about how Eddie had already been on TV and was kind of a big star at the time. And George always said, it was always be like, oh, listen, I like Hector, but Hector could be a little difficult to deal with. And Hector, like, obviously saw this was didn't recognize the situation of how the show worked, because it was like a youth thing that I think a lot of kids got in for free, and it was all the money for the wrestlers was paid for by sponsors. But Hector was like, there's 5,000 people or 2,000 people, and you booked me for this rate? No, I should be getting more because the Guerrero name means something. And look at this house we draw, when really these kids are getting it for free, or $5 or $1 or what. It was cheap just for this sort of, because it's a much larger thing, and the money was coming from a different place, not ticket prices. And Hector was having a hard time understanding that, and he was kind of getting very heated about it. And George and Stallion were trying to convey this to Hector. Well, Hector's having this very intense conversation, and Eddie walks in like he wants to say something, but he doesn't want to interrupt what's going on in this very serious conversation. So he just kind of politely waits. And as George would describe, he goes, he was just sitting over there like a little schoolboy, just waiting there very patiently, not saying a word. Just let Hector be Hector, because Hector could be that way, and just let him do it. And Hector got it all out, and Hector finally understood, and then walked off. And then as soon as Hector walked away, Eddie was like, "Excuse me, George and Stallion," and they're like, "Of course, please. Let's see what this other Guerrero is gonna yell at us for." And Eddie very politely was like, "Hey, I know you guys are the promoters, and I just want to ask if this is okay, but is it all right if I use the frog splash tonight? Because I know Jimmy Snuka's on the card, and I don't want to take away from the Superfly splash. Is it okay if I do the frog splash? I already asked Jimmy. He said it's okay. But you, as the promoter, I want to ask you if it's okay." George is just like, and this is why I love Eddie more than all the Guerreros. Because he just had this intense conversation with Hector, and here's Eddie politely waiting his turn to talk to the promoter, to get the okay from the promoter after already talking to Jimmy Snuka to do his goddamn finishing maneuver. Yeah. Like, the reason why you booked him. Like, It just explains how polite and how sincere and how Eddie as a wrestler and somebody who understands the business truly is, in the sense that he understands the bigger picture and how the promoter would feel, and doesn't want to step on anybody's toes, and the overthinking of everything, but like just the level of taking the time to have that conversation. But yeah, I don't know exactly where this was, and it might have been during that time that he was wrestling in ECW, because him and Hector had matching USA gear. So it's tough to place in George's memory. So you just kind of take where you get. So I figured this was a good spot to show how respectful he was of these local indie promoters. He treated them with the utmost respect, as opposed to, I'm just getting a payday, brother, waiting for Vince to call me back up. I mean, it's that different attitude that he had, and he approached it differently than everybody else.
So Eddie said that this wasn't his intention whatsoever, but as soon as he lost the low-key, pretty much every indie promotion in the world was like, "Oh shit, this dude's putting guys over." So he got like all the work out of it. Which leads to February 23rd, 2002, Eddie faced Super Crazy on the first ever Ring of Honor show. The era of honor begins for the IWA Intercontinental Championship.
Well, and also too, I think I might have even said this on the Trent Asset episode, but it should be reiterated here, is that the Northeast Indies had this weird thing going on after ECW closed. You had CZW going in the direction of like the hardcore deathmatch type stuff that you would get in ECW, where Ring of Honor was more of the wrestlers type stuff, the Jerry Lynn's, the Just Incredibles, Rob Van Dam type direction, because those are the two things that ECW had. We have the wrestlers of the world, and we also have the blood and guts wrestling of Tommy Dreamer, Raven, the Rotten, Sandman, Brian Lee choke slamming Tommy Dreamer through everything, and then also too we have the Dean Malenkos of the world. We have the Super Crazies. We're bringing in Taka Michinoku. We were the first to bring in Great Sasuke and Michinoku guys. It's only fitting that you take somebody from the lineage of ECW's wrestlers to be here at this Ring of Honor show. It laid the foundation, and if you wanted more of an example of what was going on and the split between Ring of Honor and CZW and how they were offering two different products that existed in one particular product, you're not going to find a better example than that was an intentional thing that was happening.
Huh. What are your thoughts on Scott Levy?
Dynamite drop it, Nicholas.
Oh, speaking of the blend of hardcore wrestling and normal wrestling, March 1st, 2002, this motherfucker went to IWA Mid-South. He faced a maskless Rey Mysterio Jr. and CM Punk for the IWA Mid-South Heavyweight Championship.
And in true Ian Rotten fashion, these three all-time fucking greats don't get a bottom rope.
I was about to say that if I could say one thing about this match, Jake Manning did not set this ring up, because these ropes are saggy as fuck.
It's like you're watching, there's an extra layer of suspense and just worry, because you're like, please don't fucking get terribly injured, guys, please.
Oh, I've set that particular ring that it was fucked up. I have set that thing up before, because that was the ring that was used for a lot of the NWA No Limit shows that would happen in Iowa. And I have set that fucking Ian Rotten ring up before, and that shit is fucking disturbing. Like that, those ropes, I don't know what the fuck they are. They're of a different fucking thing altogether. Then you would have the plywood, which I believe they weren't just like plywood, and there's a thing in the middle to put them together. You had plywood on hinges, so that way. Like you had two pieces of plywood, and they'd have a hinge in the middle, and the hinge would go down the middle because there was nothing to hook the plywood into. So the plywood was just flying all over the place. But there are two pieces that are hinged together, and you fold them up, and then you put them on the trailer that way. So obviously slamming on top of each other, the hinges would come apart, and screws would be popping out.
Oh my God.
And of course the hinges, because they're two pieces of plywood, and because they would go across the ring, the screws would be sticking up. So there's screws sticking in the middle of it, just randomly, of the ring. Then the padding was carpet padding. Not like good carpet padding that came in like a full roll, but that particle padding that they make from different particles. So you only roll that out a couple of times and it starts deteriorating. So obviously the screws are poking out at the appropriate height for it just to like kind of like, ooh, what was a little prick that I just felt right there? But not fully dig into your skin, and you're wondering why you're cut for whatever reason. But then, of course, that particle carpet padding would start wearing away because they would leave the ring outside uncovered. So that would be deteriorating and falling apart at each one of the shows. So at certain points in the ring, especially close to the ropes or definitely in the corner, you'd just be bumping on straight plywood that is also rotting as well and busting apart, and those slivers are popping through the fucking canvas, which is the most disgusting canvas you will ever fucking see in your entire life. There are no turnbuckle pads. Basically, what they have done for the actual corners is they had just taken tape and just went over it a multitude of times over all of the steel parts. So there's zero padding, but there is probably 2 inches. There's more tape over top of the metal parts of the turnbuckle pads in the corner than there is padding on the fucking ring. And that is the fucking ring that Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero saw when they walked into IWA Mid-South, a show where there was maybe 40 people in a fucking armory, and like, granted, he went on to be one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, one of the biggest wrestlers of all time. But at this time, he's a guy wrestling in mesh shorts with fucking a Pepsi tattoo and a Cobra Commander logo tattooed on his arm with straight edge across his belly. And of course, this is in a time where if you don't have fucking abs, don't even fucking talk to Vince McMahon. If I can't fucking see the fucking veins in your fucking forearms and you're not 6'5", do not even send a tape into us. They put that on their goddamn website. You must be 6'2" and 250 pounds to apply for WWE. That is what they put on their fucking website. And now Rey Guerrero and Eddie Mysterio show up, and then also Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio show up, see this entire cause of events, and they're like, you know what? We're gonna do our best stuff tonight. And just, what the fuck? And we can't even get Robert Gibson to like be like, hey, Robert, the show's running a little bit long. You guys are going to be in the ring at 9:45 instead of like 9:15. Is that okay? Fuck this, we're leaving. Like, what the fuck? What the fuck? Unbelievable. The fact that they even got in the ring and even put on like a headlock match, beyond me. Don't even understand. And then, like, the video clips of Eddie Guerrero wrestling Colt Cabana in front of, like, 20 people. Like, any of the IWA Mid-South stuff with Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero is just, it's mind-blowing that it fucking happened. Mind-blowing. And if you're questioning if we're in the darker timeline or not, know that this had happened. And also, too, like, I think, Eddie even said himself, or like like a lot of guys have, because I was not too far removed. Like a few years later, I'm wrestling on shows that were kind of co-promotion with IWA Mid-South. So like a lot of the guys that were in the locker room when I was wrestling for NWA No Limits had been in locker rooms with Eddie Guerrero and been in matches or been around him or experienced him. And something that, you know, Ian would probably say is Eddie came out to him and he's like, I want to wrestle the young guys. Is there any one of the young guys that's got a lot of promise? Also, too, I really don't want them be hanging around any big partiers. And Ian Rotten's like, well, if you want to be sober and the guy who's not really a partier but a cool dude, this guy's CM Punk. Like, you really should latch on to this. You should latch on to this guy if you're worried about sobriety. This guy's he's straight edge, and that's what you need. You need a promoter to be like, hey, no, this guy's cool.
Right.
Like Ian and Eddie would have known each other. So like when Eddie's like, hey, who's somebody I need to latch on to? Like, oh no, latch on to that guy. And sometimes that's the thing that gets someone like an Eddie Guerrero be like, okay, well, this kid wants to do this move or this thing called Pepsi plunge, or he wants to hit me with this, or he wants to do this pump handle, whatever. Sure, I'll do that because I want to spend some more time with this kid because the promoter says he's got potential. Also, too, seems like a good kid. Also, too, I think it's good that I'm around him because like I'm worried about my sobriety. I know if I'm around him, he's not going to be out back getting high. He's going to be in the locker room. He was going to want to go over the match. He's going to want to talk about what we want to do and make sure it's the best match we could possibly do. And I want to be around guys like that.
Fun side note to these IWA Mid-South matches. Eddie got stuck in Chicago and actually crashed at CM Punk and Ace Steel's house. So that's fun.
Aw. Speaking of Punk, Rey Mysterio back April 2019 posted an old picture of him, Eddie, and CM Punk from the three-way show. And then Punk obviously had to chime in because he couldn't help himself. And Punk had these following words to say. People should know how good Eddie really was. He was in a rough spot, recently fired, home front was turbulent. He came to this show and looked tired. Said to me, I hate three-ways. If it's okay with you, can you and Ray put something together and just call it for me in the ring? I wasn't sure that was possible. He didn't miss a beat. And then CM goes on to say later, it was one of the early times I remember being in that ring in my career and thinking to myself, this is fucking magic. A pleasure, an honor. And yeah, I kind of marked out reading all that stuff. Just three goats giving respect and helping each other become as great as they were.
Eddie would also go work in Japan, but as he was about to leave for Japan, he got a call from John Laurinaitis from WWE, and he told him, don't sign anything long-term with New Japan. We're thinking about bringing you back. And they'd end up offering Eddie a base contract, just like any other brand new wrestler. Eddie would come in, start completely from scratch, which he was more than happy to do. And as we mentioned, Eddie shot his shoot around this time, and one of the last things he said is that it was still his dream to be a main eventer on a pay-per-view. And April 1st, 2002, Eddie would climb the first rung of the ladder in doing so, and that is where we will pick up on Eddie Guerrero Part 4. You guys got anything before we wrap this up?
Well, as I said throughout this episode, I painted a lot of parallels to me and Eddie, and as I've said before, like it's such an inspiration to me in my rougher times of my career, or dealing with alcoholism, or dealing with like, man, am I ever going to get to do the thing that I love so much? I've turned to what Eddie Guerrero did in this time period. Now, I don't know if I'm going to get the success that we're going to talk about in the next part of Eddie Guerrero, but anytime things have gotten tough, I just think about what would kind of Eddie Guerrero do, and this is definitely the rough part of his career, of his story, of his life. And I think if you're going to go through some rough times, you've got to come up with a plan and how you're going to attack it, and I think that's exactly what Eddie did during this time period and sowed the seeds for his upcoming success. And that's what we'll discuss in the next episode.
Thanks to everyone donating to our Patreon, patreon.com/TimBellPod. Check out TimBellPod.com. You can find all our social media there. You can listen to the episodes there. I wanted to say this real quick. Don't just do this for us. Do this for everyone you follow. But Facebook and Instagram is doing this thing where they'll only share your posts to 5% of your audience unless you give them money, which is kind of their whole business model. You drop them $10, $100, whatever. So not only someone at like Tim Bell Pod's level, not only your favorite independent wrestler, not only a band who has 1,000 Grammys, if you want to interact with them and make sure you're getting all their posts, you got to go to Instagram or Facebook and turn notifications on. That's the only way you can guarantee that you're getting everything they put out, that you're getting these sweet, sweet Jake Manning tent memes I make. So make sure you do that. Again, not just for us. Do that for anyone you want to support, because otherwise they're paying a bunch of money to Facebook, and goddamn, they're an evil fucking piece of shit company.
If I were you, I'd hightail it right the boot scoop boogie out of here. Hello, this is Micah Joseph Loving for Tim Bell Pod. I don't know why I told you my middle name. Nobody gives a fuck about a middle name, but I did that. Just letting you know about Patreon. You probably already know about it, but me, Jake, and Nick do all types of cool bonus episodes, kind of cut loose, lose our minds. It's a blast. Those usually run you about $5 if you want to get a hold of those, but any dollar amount would be appreciated. I don't know what else to say, so Patreon, fart.